in any specific order. The question is, how have you navigated senses of imposter syndrome or feeling like you might not fit within your job? And I'll post that in the chat. And so anyone can start us off.
I'll go. I think from an HR perspective, we're kind of forced into that, right? Are we for the company? Are we for the employee? And so like I kind of have to live the imposter syndrome, like, but early on I was very much like pro employee, like how, employee rights and this, that, and the other. And then throughout my career, I kind of grown to know the right, working for the employer, but also for not being a fit in your job, working on the East Coast. Is a completely different monster than the West Coast as most of us know it. And I knew early on that you're here after me.
Alejandro, your internet is cutting out a little bit again. Feel free maybe to just put your response in the chat and then I can read them out if you'd like. But the internet is cutting out. Okay, great. If anyone else would like to share their experience, please feel free to.
I'd like to share mine. I think, so I didn't experience, and I still haven't experienced imposter syndrome, right? I know my competencies and I know where I'm lackluster. So I haven't experienced it. I just have to be fair to myself, and I believe everybody should be fair to themselves, right? You get your salary, your wage, you labor for them, you get paid for your labor. And if you know your competencies, right, and if you're fair to yourself, that shouldn't be an issue, or at least it wasn't for me.
So when I started out my career in civil engineering, it was still a man's club. So I was one of the few women in the office. Going on to construction sites, I was treated very differently from my male colleagues, and honestly downright almost harassed by contractors. They didn't want to listen to this young, at the time blonde, thing coming onto their construction site and telling them what to do. So it was really tough at the beginning, learning to stand up for myself and really assert my knowledge and my experience. I was a licensed professional. I had stamped and signed the drawings and they didn't care. They just thought that this young blonde thing had no right telling them what to do. And so it finally got to the point where I just learned to be extremely assertive, really grew me out of my shell and had to stand up for myself. I still feel it a lot to this day. As I've gotten promoted, I'm a younger female dealing with older men who are still very entrenched in that engineering mentality of this is a man's club. I feel like the only woman in a men's locker room half the time still. And a lot of times you have to realize they invited me to the table. So it's not like I'm a kid sitting at the adults table. They invited me. My opinion matters to people. And yeah, I'll get insulted, I'll get put down. They'll criticize me pretty heavily still, but I own that seat. I've earned my right to be there, and getting over that feeling of being the little kid kicking their heels back and forth because I'm sitting on a chair that's way too big for me. it's still in the back of my mind. And that's just something that I fight every day. I have an opinion and my opinion matters. And I'm a licensed structural engineer. Heck, I've been a licensed structural engineer for over a decade. And sometimes I still don't feel the right to talk about structural engineering. So it's just something that you every day have to be like, you know what, I have an opinion and my opinion matters. And it may not match what everybody else wants to do, but as long as we're all listening to each other and we're all owning each other's opinions and perspective, and then coming out of it with what works best for the most people and for the company as a whole, it doesn't matter if it's not what I thought was right. If it's what everybody else thinks is right and they listen to my perspective, then I'm good.
So my name is Carla Tiaga Flores. So sorry that I'm late, you guys. My car got stuck in 30 minutes of traffic on my way to the office. So yay me. But I think I kind of agree with Jory. Like, I have to remind myself that I was invited to be part of this office in this career field. I work in public accounting. I've been in my office now for about 1 year. I did an internship and then I came over here. But there's something about, I guess, faking that confidence that has gotten me very far in 1 year. As opposed to, I see everyone else who started at the same time as I did, that they're still doing like the basic like tax returns. They're still working on like smaller items. And I literally had a manager go one time to me, he goes, "Do you know how to do a partnership return?" And I said, "Start to finish?" He's like, "Yes." I said, "No." He's like, "Perfect." He's like, "I'm going to show you what I want." He goes, "And I just want you to run with it." He's like, "And we will figure it out along the way." But the whole time that I'm doing this, I was literally doing this return, thinking to myself, everything I'm doing is wrong. I have no clue what I'm doing. Why did I get this gigantic responsibility when everyone else has like these easy jobs? But I kind of had to remind myself, like, well, there must be something that I presented in myself that made them want to have me as the candidate for this program with this manager. And every day though, every time that I turn in work, I'm like, this is awful. They're gonna just kill me. They're gonna like roast me with all these review points, and then they'll come back and be like, "Oh, good job." And I have like a moment of like, "Are you sure? Like, I did it." Like, is it, you don't want to give me points? They're like, "No, you did a good job." But I do think it takes time. Like, you'll go years feeling that imposter syndrome, and you'll think one day I'll get to work and I'll be like, "I got this." And I'm still waiting for that day that I come in that I'm like, no one can tell me anything because I know what I'm doing, because I will be the first person to doubt myself before anybody else does.
Yeah, I definitely can't say when the imposter syndrome started or when it stopped. So I shared earlier that I went into my role being really straightforward, like, no, I don't have real life experience. I can't show you like fundraising events I've led or grants I've written. And so for maybe the first 6 months of my job, I really was wondering, like, do I fit in? I also work in a community where 98% of the population we serve is students of color. I'm a white woman from a middle class background, and I think I brought a voice to the table that was like, just let me listen. Like, I want to find the resources to make what you want to happen. And I felt like an imposter even doing that, right? And so it was like, how is I supposed to like do the really like minor things, like write email campaigns and create social media posts, when like there's this huge thing of like, I don't belong in this community, I'm an outsider, accept me. But maybe after a year or so, I just realized that I wasn't going to my boss. So my boss is our executive director, so he's everyone's boss. I wasn't going to him for approval anymore. I was just kind of doing things and like writing grants and, you know, bringing grants to him, being like, we have a great shot at this. And like, you know, I getting my first taste of super big success, like finding a way to get to Jack Dorsey and getting a huge donation from him in the middle of the pandemic. Like, I was like, I'm the expert. Like, I don't know when it happened or how it shifted, but at some point I realized that I am the expert. And because I am in a very different position within my organization than, 90% of our staff are direct service staff. They're running programs, they're at the schools, they're in the community. And we gave them an opportunity to present to our board of directors recently, and they were so nervous. And I just told them, I said, what you need to remember every day is that you're the expert. Yes, we have this board of directors who oversee what we do and they give us the yes or no with our budget, but they don't know your role like you do. And it took me a while to realize that, but it was funny because when I said that to the rest of my team, they were like, why didn't you tell us that before the meeting? And I was like, I didn't realize that it was happening. I'm just not fazed by this anymore. Like, I go in a room and I tell people I'm the expert. I meet with corporate partners and I tell them, here's what happens when you write us a grant. And yeah, it probably took about a year to feel comfortable. But like I said, at some point, I just, like Juan said earlier, like I knew my competencies going in and I knew what I was capable of learning. And then at some point, I really just stopped, questioning my value and started putting my best foot forward. And yeah, and then I don't feel like an imposter anymore. And I actually give a lot of advice to other people who are reaching out and asking, like, how did you go about this fundraising thing? Or how did you make the change from like program to development? And it's a good feeling to help other people who want to make that move, because there's not a lot of people who work in development who really love what they do. And it's really great to be able to share my experience about that.